All right. Hi, you guys. Welcome to another episode of the SweetLife Entrepreneur and Business Podcast. I am so excited to be joined by my guest today. I actually found her on Clubhouse. Many of you know who've been listening that I am binging Clubhouse and can't get enough of it. And this is exactly why, because I get to dive into spaces that I never would have been able to before and find people like Mollie. How do you say your last name?
Yes, perfect. McGlocklin. Absolutely. Yes, I know. Is it phonetic? Is it not? Yes, I hear
Right.
that.
And find people like Mollie McGlocklin. I am so
Perfect.
excited to welcome you here on the show. Can you introduce everybody to your area of expertise and superpower and just give us a little bit of background before we dive into what we're talking about today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. This has already been a pleasure. I can't wait to get into more with you. So, I am the creator of a company called Sleep is a Skill that helps people optimize their sleep through a blend of technology, accountability, and behavioral change. And a little bit background on me and why I'm so obsessed with the topic of sleep and why it's totally changed my life is that for so many years, I did everything not to do for your sleep. You know, every article you read, what to do, I was doing the opposite in a lot of ways. But it really didn't think it was much of a problem. I didn't think much of it at all. Living in Manhattan as an entrepreneur, burning the candle at both ends, stressed to the max. And I just thought of my sleep as a lot of labels. I thought of it as I'm a night owl, I'm a short sleeper, I'm not the greatest sleeper. Oh, it must be in my genes. That's just how it is for me. And you know, a number of different things, but didn't think of it as something that I would have much of a say of how to transform. And I didn't correlate when I was starting to get more and more sick at different things. You know, I was just getting run down, anxious, you know, kind of I had gastritis, I had shingles, I had a number
Oh
of things
my
that were just indicators, right, that you are stressed and things are not working.
gosh.
So,
What?
so yeah, and then it was not until I went through my own period of insomnia while traveling internationally, so in different countries, you know, not speaking the same language, and I cannot sleep, and it was really a lot of the entrepreneurship part of it that you know our businesses weren't ready to be taken on the road yet. My fiance and I, and how it manifested was suddenly I can't sleep, and just the amount of anxiety that was happening during that period. I went to the doctors in Croatia, got, you know, with Google Translate and leave with their version of Ambien. And in that moment, kind of like, what is the game plan here? Am I supposed to just take something like this for the rest of my life? You know, that doesn't align with my identity of who I think of myself. And yet I'm desperate to sleep. So what do I do?
Right.
So what ended up happening was really just getting up under this area, going really down the rabbit hole of what it would take from what I learned, a chronobiology and circadian rhythm perspective to transform my sleep. And then from that place, it really just it snowballed into like podcasts, newsletters, courses, all of the things.
Okay. So you said so many things, and we're just going to kind of come together and
Yes.
unpack it. But right now, I mean, your superpower is helping high performers and entrepreneurs and small business owners have a healthy life and sleep. And, you know, yet that we all identify, just like you said, I mean, I am you back in the past, right?
Yes.
I do not sleep as much. It goes in flows. I have an inconsistent sleep. You know, I have kids, which brings a whole nother dynamic into that. And I travel about 5 months a year.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I think I have like a recipe for sleep disaster. And so I'm so excited to learn from you today. And I know our listeners too are going to be like, oh yeah, that's probably me. I'm like, so let's start by just really unpacking this. So you said circadian rhythm.
Yes.
Talk to me, like, what is that for anybody that is not really aware of that term and how, and what part of our bodies function in that capacity? How does that work?
Yes, perfect. And I also want to say for what you're sharing too, despite that being one of the lowest points at the time of my life, was what it felt like, you know, just nothing is working. This is the worst thing. This is horrible. And yet I do now look back on it as being one of the best things that could have happened to me. So if you are at any given spot in your journey around sleep, I think there really is so much to learn from it. It really, no pun intended, woke me up and had me transform my life in ways that I don't think I would have unless it was at such a rock bottom place. So having said that,
well, just along the lines too, thank you for saying that,
yeah,
because I do feel like, I mean, I'm really transparent here with our listeners on the
yes,
podcast. I mean, I do feel like I have hit a wall. I just turned 45 this week, and I've
yes,
always been able to push and push and push. I'm a high performer, I have tons of energy, always been able to do it. And it was just finally a couple months ago, is the first time in my whole entire life where I was so tired and I couldn't push through. I've still always been able
Yes.
to do that. I like literally couldn't think. I literally couldn't speak. Like the words were coming out of my mouth incorrectly.
Yes.
It was the first time ever where I feel like I hit that wall and I couldn't keep pushing it forward. And so
Yes.
I knew at that point in time, and this was, prior to Christmas, that something like I'm not healthy. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I go to the gym every single day. All those things don't matter. Like I knew that I was literally aging my brain. And
Yes.
frankly, as with my father had dementia, and these are all things that I'm starting to think about. And I'm saying, listen, I have really hit this wall and I need to sleep. This is no
Yes.
longer something that, and I don't want any of our listeners to, and this is the whole point of the show, like,
Yeah.
don't get to the point that Molly did. Don't to get to
Yes.
the point where I'm like
Exactly.
stalking this woman on Clubhouse, you guys, going, help me. I have hit a wall. So we don't want you to have to be to the point where I frankly
Yes.
am literally at this recording and where Molly was, because how much more are you supposed to be, are you capable of being before you ever get here, and so on and so forth. So thank you for saying that. And
Yes.
that's why I stalked you.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Because I
There
do
we
think
are.
it's really important because I was reading nonstop all these different things around how to improve my sleep and speaking with all these different experts. And one thought leader in this area had made the point that when your sleep is not working, there's something that your body is really trying to tell you. And I'm not trying to say that in a loose, like esoteric way or anything, but I think that's really important because how I was running this didn't come out of a vacuum. This was from, years of kind of a mismanagement of my time, my days, keep pushing it to the next level. And, and so it occurred from a snowballing of that. And so what it really took was that to actually for me to listen. So on a plus side, while I at the time didn't want to go through it, it actually was a blessing. And so I hope that there can be that message and that there are so many success stories on the other side of people being able to shift this area. So one, I acknowledge you for the sharing and the vulnerability there because it's so important. And two, so then the how. So what you said about the circadian rhythm. Why this is important in this conversation is one, just to kind of bring it back to the basics. So no matter where you're at and where your sleep journey is, that we can always start to come back to one, that this is a skill that, okay, so this is learnable. So let's learn. So from the circadian rhythm perspective, one that exists on a spectrum was something that I didn't understand. So the circadian rhythm is this 24-hour rhythm as human beings that we function within. But that rhythm, the cueing system for that rhythm can either be on the spectrum from a strong side or a weak side, and you might be falling somewhere in between that spectrum. And I would make the argument that many of us are on the weaker side of that, just as a modern society, how we're functioning. And as diurnal creatures, this is all kind of coming from this concept around chronobiology, the science of really time and how that impacts our biology. As diurnal creatures, we are meant to be active during the day and at rest at night. And of course, in my example, I was doing the opposite, like, upside down living. So we're looking to how can we bring things back and align with those cue givers that will help our rhythms be strong. So those people, those friends of ours that might they go out, everyone goes out and it's out super late, but they still wake up at the exact same time, early morning. And you're
Right.
like, how are they doing that? That's crazy. That's actually what we're looking to train for, is that kind of specificity around just the automaticity of waking up routinely, going to sleep routinely around the same times. But there's tons of things we can do to get to there.
Okay, fascinating. So, and I know those people. I'm married
Yes.
to one of those people. That it doesn't matter what time he goes to sleep. It is like this is what time he gets up every single day.
Yes.
Okay, so talk to us about really why is this important for fully understanding for those high achievers, busy entrepreneurs? How does this fit into our whole life business strategy? Because to me, as a business strategist, the way I need to form it within my own brain is say, this is part of my strategic business and life design. This is just as important as marketing and selling and other things else. It's a very holistic approach to business and life. And so how for entrepreneurs and small business owners are really just high achievers who are listening to this, why is this so important? How does this really affect their everyday and honestly, their profit? and their performance. I mean, that's what we're really getting down to
Yes.
too. If that's the driver, great. That's the driver. Are you not making as much money as you could be because frankly, you aren't sleeping right? I'm sure that there's some data and some correlation there.
Absolutely. Well, so there's so many places we can go with that, but I can just even say anecdotally that my fiance owns companies that help train poker players at the table that are high stakes, lots of stress, and how to make those decisions that their decisions and their thinking from a cognitive athlete perspective will impact, possibly thousands and millions of dollars as a result, right? So one of the first places that they begin is the sleep optimization perspective. And I work with tons of poker players in the management of that. And so I share that just because that's a, very tangible experience of at the table. You can either walk away with lots of money or not. And so it's kind of entrepreneurial in nature, but you apply that in the high stakes of your days, of your business interactions with people, and just that cognitive ability to show up consistently and reliably. Like, so in the example of myself, for years, there wouldn't be account onableness around how I would be when I'd wake up in the morning. It wouldn't be like, oh, okay, so for that next really important client call or what have you, I will be bringing my A game. It wasn't like that. It was like, I hope I get a good night's sleep and, that I can have that functionality where right? Like,
that's me. I'm raising my hand if you guys are watching the video of this. Like, this is me for sure.
Yes, exactly. Because that, there's tons of studies that will point to this. So whether just error rates, if you're sleep deprived, and the amount of errors that you might make if you're taking, tests, or this is important for pilots. These become life or death elements. But certainly from a productivity perspective, like, are you gonna have all your faculties available to you in those really important times? And so just to scale it back, I think of it as a couple of things. One, I think of it as super, super important for that productivity perspective. And also because I had so much of that mental health component in there with anxiety and stress and moodiness and crankiness and freak out, then with that, just it provides for me just a really important space to be at a equilibrium with my how I'm approaching the world around me and stress levels and anxiety levels. And we can get into some of the wearable indicators for that. So it's not so esoteric. It really has some kind of quantified data behind it.
Right. Okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Actually, I definitely want to talk about the wearables at the time of this recording. Probably if you're listening to this 6 months or 8 months from now, the wearable part will probably not be accurate enough to date because the technology is evolving. And that's what we were kind of talking about behind the scenes. But let's go ahead. Can you start just by sharing a couple of steps for those of our listeners who listen? They're like, okay, this is it. I am April right now. I mean, just tell me, like, what should I be doing to get on top of this, the process of bringing this into order?
Yes, great. Okay, so step number one, what I actually say is despite the fact that a lot of what I'll be talking about from the circadian rhythm kind of lifestyle perspective is that it's a lot of it's kind of how to harken back to almost hunter-gatherer days and aligning with sunrise and sunset. I'm not saying everyone needs to rise with the sun. I'm not making that at all, but I'm saying that there's a lot of things we can do to bring about that workability with those rhythms of nature, because that's going to really result in higher sleep efficiency and a quality of our sleep. And at the very same time, despite the fact that I'm saying that, I'm also going to promote the marriage of technology, since so much of this technology is at the source of our kind of being off kilter with that relationship. Ironically, then bringing in tech, I've found to really make a difference to gamify this. So again, down the road, you're listening. What I would say is the first place to begin is a management of a logging system of where your sleep is at right now is really, really eye-opening to people. Because often people say, I know I'm not sleeping well. But then we try to get up under, well, how many hours are we sleeping? What times are we sleeping? How many wake-ups? What's your sleep onset look like? All of these sort of things. And a lot of it's like, well, I don't know, some gray areas, a lot of question marks, because it's such a hard area to track. So getting a proper, or getting a sleep tracker of whatever at the time time of listening to this is known to be one of the, most effective on the market at the moment, right?
And follow Molly on Instagram or Clubhouse, because I'm sure she'll be up to date with this. So if you're listening to this, she will, I'm sure, be talking about what is the most up to date thing when you are listening to this episode.
Yes, I'm often fondly known as Gadget Girl. By the end of the Clubhouse that we were talking about, that was my name, and not from a perspective that these are infallible. There's still things you don't want to just blindly listen to whatever stats are coming back. You want to be aware of what they're good at, what they're not so good at. But either way, what they tend to be pretty solid at is: are you asleep or are you awake? What time does that look like? But then also some health metrics that indicate the your recovery that you attained throughout the course of the night. So all of those things will give us, kind of a window or insight into your sleep. So I say start with that first place, because in years back, what it was, this one of the first recommendations was keep a sleep diary, write it out manually. And now you could do that, but also, to begin to start tracking, it will be automated for you and often provide way more insight that you might be surprised by. Some blind spots might emerge.
Okay, and along those lines, I have a question for you about one of those metrics.
Yeah.
With one of my sleep trackers that I had used in the past, and you mentioned it before we started recording this, which was heart rate variability. Can you explain what that? I mean, I saw it on my sleep tracker. I'm like Googling it online. It was actually really hard for me to understand why that was so important. Can you give us the 101 on that?
I was so glad you said that. So this one metric you could devote into multiple podcasts. There's actually entire podcasts that just talk about how to kind of understand this one metric and influence it. So you're not alone in the confusion.
Makes me feel better. I'm like, why don't I get this? Okay.
But it's the reason why it's, I foresee, one, it's already, ballooned in popularity around understanding this. And I foresee it being even more and more influential in our health. So what is it? It's heart rate variability, HRV, is basically the time interval in between your heartbeat, and an indicator of your recovery. So if you can think of heart rate as kind of your load that's put onto you, moment to moment, then HRV is reflective of how quickly can you recover from moment to moment. So it's recovery of both mental elements of recovery, but also physical elements of recovery. And that physical can be about like the foods you're eating, the workouts you're doing, the air quality in your space, pre-existing conditions that you might have going on. But then the mental component is really eye-opening too, of just how you're relating to the world around you as entrepreneurs too. Oh my goodness. Like that can be really eye-opening. You get a lot of stuff on your plate and suddenly that number will show that impact. And that can be a really cool way for those of us that might want to do that push through mindset. And I'm so one of those, to start to respect the importance for recovery time and almost relating to our body like an athlete would, to build in that really next level recovery so that you can take on all the things you got to take on.
Okay. Yeah. And I can see that. I do understand a certain aspect in the correlation of that, because when I used to train for fitness competitions, and I used to do the heart rate training, and when, between the things I was doing, like how fast would my heart rate recover between sets. And so is that kind of the same thing that we're talking about here that's happening in sleep that we're measuring?
Yes, exactly. So that's why a lot of people are excited about particularly longitudinal nocturnal HRV. So you can measure, of course, your HRV 24/7, and it's the nighttime HRV can be really eye-opening, because that's giving us an indication while there's not presumably as much noise that's happening, because there's a lot of noise on your measurement of your HRV during the day, because you're eating, you're talking, you're working out, all these things. Whereas when you're sleeping, presumably that's largely recovery time, and that is what HRV is all about. But so if you wake up, and traditionally this is very simplified because there's way more nuances to this metric, but often the higher it is from your baseline, the more recovered you are, and the more you see it kind of dip down, then that can often indicate that you are being more taxed, you're stressed, or you're getting sick. So it's actually really popular right now. That's why it's trending too with COVID. that a lot of people are looking to this as indicators and days in advance of when you might even feel that you're getting run down, that number is shifting. And that can be a signal to really prioritize that recovery. So those are just some of the ways that you can relate to it. But in the practical application, what I see with my clients is, so all the clients are wearing wearables. They'll see, oh my God, my HRV is really dipping like significantly. So then they'll prioritize recovery from whatever that looks like. So if they're big time athletes, then they will adjust their training to really lower that and to take that off time. If they're just entrepreneurs, and they might kind of scale back some of their calls or what have you, to really make a difference with that number, and then get recovered in a way that can make a difference the following day.
Okay, good. That's amazing. This is so much great information. Okay, so number one, log. Make sure that
Yeah.
we're paying attention to what we're doing. Get a wearable. We're not going to do it the archaic way of tracking when we go to sleep. I mean, there is just absolutely so much data out there that I'm hearing you say that it's important for us to track, know, and be able to understand so that we can adjust things. So, what else would you recommend for those people who are listening after they go through these first steps? Like, what type of common adjustments are typically, I know every single person is different, but are typically beneficial that you have seen with high performers and entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So one asterisk that I would put for the wearables is just real quick, ensuring that we're not getting like a nocebo effect, by saying, "Oh my God, I have so many clients that literally come because I'm only getting 20 minutes of deep sleep, 30 minutes of REM, or whatever." And so, one, just know that as of at least this time of the recording, most of the hand and wrist wearables, they are had so much great information. I love what is available there, and the sleep stage classification in particular. So knowing, is this deep? Is this REM? Is this light? It's not the best. So to not get yourself all riled up around that part, instead just focus on those basics that we talked about. What time did you go to sleep? What time did you wake up? And then some of those recovery metrics. So stay in that zone. So that's just my asterisk around that. But then what I would say for all humans, and particularly entrepreneurs, is this concept of circadian rhythm entrainment is really, really valuable to have a framework by which you set up your days, so that you can strengthen that circadian rhythm. So you can be like your husband and just kind of, the goal is to be like your husband and to basically wake up around the same time, often go to bed at the same time. All of that comes from that. So this is actually, a term you can find in any kind of chronobiology textbook, of understanding that you are entraining your circadian rhythm. But that is from a number of what they call time givers that are external to you, that you are playing a role in from a behavioral perspective, of getting. So a couple of those that I'll just rattle off real quick. The top down, most important one is light, particularly sunlight, and the timing of that. So if you get nothing out of what I'm saying, then I would definitely say that first thing in the morning, how to train yourself to get even just a few minutes. I mean, ideal would be more, but a few minutes of sunlight outside. And unfortunately, behind a window doesn't really count. It counts, but it takes much, much longer. Estimates with Jamie Zeitzer out of Stanford puts it at anywhere from 50 to 100 times longer to reset your master clock each morning if you're getting sunlight behind a window versus outside. So you want to just get yourself outside, but also expose particularly your eyes to that morning sunlight. You want it to be really often wherever you might be on the globe. We're aiming for that to be in the morning hours, usually before like 10 a.m. Of getting that morning light. And the reason for that is that behind your eyes is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your master clock, that influences all your peripheral clocks as to what time it is. And why that's important is then a whole cascade of kind of hormones and functionality happen based on what time the body perceives it to be. And so we want it to be as consistent, those triggering systems, as possible. So that's that light in the morning and then dosing it throughout the day. But then you want as bright days as possible and as dim nights as possible. And when I say dim, it's like post sunset. You want to be getting, really the actual recommendation is like candles, but I know that's not always so practical. So even like I got like red lights over here. So,
Mm.
that can be another thing that you can bring in if you're not willing to do the candles. But so we're looking for very, very dim lighting that allow us to have our cake and eat it too. So versus like how things used to be, sun would set, we kind of go to sleep, not long after for thousands of years. Now we want to be able to still like, do things, but we don't want to impact our melatonin production. So that kind of red light, candles, or worst case scenario, incandescent lights that have more red in them, those can make a difference. So that getting that light right. And then the next step would be temperature. So being mindful of really having this arc of your body temperature throughout the course of the day. So high temperature throughout the day, movement, activity, eating, having engaging in lots of dynamic, cognitively demanding tasks, all those things during the day. But then in the evening, shifting over to fasting, relaxation, resting, connecting, kind of calming everything down. So for entrepreneurs, what we do is create really like a layout of your day where you have a set wake up time, you have a set bedtime, and then from that place, then how to create kind of two parts to your day, like a day mode and a night mode. And then even just these little things like understanding that, oh my God, when I have my food will influence the timing of when I fall asleep and when I wake up, and or the amounts of wake ups that I have throughout the night. Things of this nature can be super, super empowering for people.
I learned so much. I never knew that about the sun in the morning. Thank you so much. Like, I literally, I'm here taking notes. It's just incredibly fascinating. And so the sun and the light obviously all make sense now that you explain that, but that would never be anything that would be, just obviously common knowledge to those of us who
Yes.
who aren't experts like you. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. You have given us a ton of information. I have one last question that I'm curious about how you're going to answer. Obviously, I don't know it, and that's why I'm asking it. Is there a minimum amount of sleep that and I'm sure everybody's different, but generally speaking, that you believe people need to function in a healthy capacity?
Oh, yeah, that's the $1 million question. Everyone wants to
Right.
know that one for sure. And so some of the known recommendations are having us as a healthy adult, and because it changes throughout the years, basically at what age you are. But as a healthy adult, then getting anywhere from 7 to 9 is the recommended, amount that we'll have thrown out. There are other people that will speak to that you can, for some people, it might make sense to be in the, sixes range and what have you, based on the quality of that sleep. But so I will say that the it's kind of split on that topic. But certainly what you can do is through the tracking element of things, start to get up under that. The more we have some of these kind of top down, most important things addressed, then what often begins to emerge is kind of because, sometimes you got to get past all of this sleep deprivation and built up
Right.
time of variability of sleeping all kinds of hours and then not enough and ups and downs. So once we start having those structures, often what emerges is more of your kind of set point for your sleep at the age that you're at and at the health level and energy expenditure that you're at each day.
So you can have a clearer understanding of that once everything else just kind of falls into order, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question.
Yes.
Is there a certain way? Well, let me rephrase this. Can you catch up on sleep?
Yeah, good question. I know, because then it's like that sleep debt topic was very popular for a number of years. And so that is another one that is a bit of a not point of contention, but there's different schools of thought. And so well, if we go back to the conversation around dementia that you mentioned, that's a really big topic that's come out of this looks like a really strong correlation between sleep deprivation and neurodegenerative disorders. So whether it's Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, different things of that nature, really linked because of the lack of proper cleaning. So glymphatic drainage was the term that was coined around this. So glymphatic drainage meaning versus lymphatic, it's glymphatic, and glymphatic is the cleansing process of the brain each night during sleep, during deep sleep in particular. And what it's doing is it's basically rinsing out almost a janitorial process of your brain, of the the buildup of waste products in the brain each night. And so, and that's with amyloid beta plaques, are basically what's left over. It's a kind of calcification in the brain if we're not having that proper amount. So the concern, so the reason I mentioned that is that we don't see a lot of great ways to counteract that. So say if you've been doing that for years and years, and there's this buildup of this kind of a dirty brain, if you will, because of
Right.
that buildup. And it's very similar to brains that we see for late stage, Alzheimer's, dementia, what have you. There's like it looks hand in hand, and we don't have a really strong way to then reverse that. So what I would say, even from that perspective alone, is that we don't want to rely on this kind of messy relationship to sleep where, oh, I'll make up for it on the weekends or what have you. Because also, if we just get back to the basics of what we know for great sleep, that the more we have that variability in the up and downs, one of the term for it is actually social jet lag. And so social jet lag being this concept that, oh, around 5 days of the week, I'm really great with my sleep. I do pretty consistent, but then on the weekends, I want to let loose. And then you stay up late and it's like 3 hours difference or more or whatever. And so with that, then you're having the experience that's similar to, from a biological perspective, similar to jet lag when you try to get yourself back on your normal schedule on Sunday night or Monday or whatever. But you didn't go anywhere, but you're still having that negative impact on your body. So the long and the short of it is, it doesn't seem to be a reliable method to build that sleep debt and kind of knock it out by having these long stretches of sleep, because then that also impacts, because quality sleep is a measurement of how your sleep was the night before, the night before that, night before that. So it kind of all plays a role in there. So if you didn't sleep so well one night, often people will benefit from what's known as kind of rebound sleep, because now the body is really craving to get itself back on track, and it will, kind of greedily get the sleep staging that it needs. But you can't rely on that as a sustainable element, because then that throws off your circadian rhythm, and now you're not getting tired at the same time. And it's so frustrating.
Right. All of that makes sense.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. I learned so much today. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. And we're going to make sure everybody knows how to find you in the show notes. But can you tell everybody who's listening to this, like, oh my gosh, I need more of Mollie. I need her help. I need her in my life. What does that look like? How can people work with you more?
Yeah. Well, number one, just thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for your also just transparency and vulnerability about how you're relating to your sleep, and, just gives us all hope in these different periods when we are struggling to hear, okay, I'm not alone. Cause that's really what I was dealing with my sleep. And it takes courage to share that, because you could be like, oh yeah, I've got my whole life together and da, da, da. I really, I really admire that. So great work with that. And then, yes, if you are struggling with your sleep, this is a real mission-based thing for me. So one, at sleepisaskill.com, there's lots of things that are available for free. We have a weekly newsletter. So I call it Mollie's Monday Obsessions, because I'm pretty obsessive about this topic. And so all these, things that I'm obsessing about in the world of sleep, also kind of a sleep experiments, lots of graphs and fun charts and whatever. And so that's every Monday. When you sign up for that, you also get a free downloadable PDF that's the optimized bedroom, how to optimize your sleep environment, comes right along. And then we also have a sleep assessment that you can take. So whatever you're dealing with your sleep, then that will get you some kind of tailored advice around those areas. We have weekly podcasts with different sleep experts and, sleep tech and what have you. So all of that is available for free. And we put out a lot on social media, and we're really amping that up as well. And then if you are really struggling, you need more than that, then we do have courses and one-on-ones and different, ways of working together as well.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much, Mollie. I'm definitely going there. And I appreciate your time and your expertise in pouring into me and our whole entrepreneur community. And I am sure that this is, going to be an important topic. It has been, but really, as you said, moving forward. So we just really appreciate your expertise and being here with us today. And it was such a pleasure to get to meet you.
Oh, same here. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thank you.